course, the biggest cuts that the Pentagon makes may well be to veterans' benefits, medical care, which is already dismal, their office staffs, in other words, laying off clerks and so on, and other areas that won't affect these corporations that fatten on military contracts. Now, at another time, this struggle would not be happening. The Pentagon would get whatever it wanted, and the government would still be able to keep the bankers happy while funding some social programs and keeping schools, hospitals, and prisons open so it could pacify or lock up the masses. But not today. The difference is that there's a worldwide capitalist recession going on. Not just in this country, in all the capitalist countries. Yeah, the statistics just came out on Europe. Unemployment's gone up again. Despite all the talk of a recovery, the situation of the masses is deteriorating all the time. Because, you know, it isn't just whether you're unemployed now or not. It's how long you've been unemployed. How much have you had to dip into whatever you might have had, or sell your furniture, or do whatever you could to scrape up money, borrow from your relatives. Your situation, if you don't get a job, your personal situation keeps getting worse and worse, even though statistically it might not look like that. The real unemployment statistics, which include those who are discouraged, meaning they can't actively look for work, they're not just discouraged, they may not even be physically able to look for work. They might not be able to afford to look for work. And also those working far fewer hours than they need to survive. These figures are dismal and continue to be. Young people have no future except unemployment or debt slavery. Even getting a college degree, which costs a small fortune, won't guarantee you a job. And if you get one, it can be at minimum wage, as there was an article just this week about all the students who have BA degrees and they're working for minimum wage, which means they can't pay back those loans. They'll have those loans for the rest of their life hanging over them. Now, here's the thing about the budget. When people aren't working, they're not paying taxes, either income taxes or the so-called payroll taxes that go to fund Social Security and Medicare. So that's the real cause of the budget crisis, not just the intransigence of the Republicans or the way that, you know, the Democrats have gone for, up until now, always a bigger military budget. It's the capitalist system. It's the irrational and intractable crisis of this system. Basically, and you can get much more of the details if you read Comrade Fred's book on Capitalism at a Dead End, but what it boils down to is this. When technology reaches the high level that it's at now, the capitalists are forced into cutthroat competition to get the latest labor-saving technology, which means laying off workers. If they don't keep doing this, they're ruined. Look at all the mergers that are taking place right now. The impetus behind them is to eliminate jobs, whether it's Office Max merging with Office Depot or American Airlines merging with US Airways. They're going to cut down, if there's like an Office Max and an Office Depot in the same area, one of them will have to go. And the people who work there will have to go. But the company will try to sell more out of the one outlet, the merged company. Now, of course, if the workers controlled the economy, it would be totally different. Labor-saving technology would make our lives much easier, not much harder. We'd work fewer hours and get much more for our work. We'd have time for recreation, culture, and just plain enjoying life with our friends and families. Take away the profit motive, and high technology would become a blessing, not a horror. But to do that, we have to liberate what the workers have built from the grip of those who claim to own it all, even though they never lifted a shovel or washed a single dish. Finally, we need to look at this as the beginning of a new period, one in which the working class will no longer need to be convinced that capitalism is terrible for them, but one in which they'll be looking for answers about how to fight and about both what it is doing to them and eventually how to get rid of it. And that's where a party like Workers' World comes in. We don't claim to have a blueprint for revolution, but we do have a proud history, a history that we are proud of, in understanding the workings of capitalism and at the same time in fighting it tooth and nail, both ideologically and in the streets. That's what Marxism and Leninism are all about. We know that a most important ingredient in this struggle is to break down the barriers that have been erected to divide our class. Racism, sexism, anti-LGBTQ bigotry, oppression of immigrants, mass incarceration, especially of youth and people of color, and increasingly women. And we are doing all we can to bring together our class, especially those who are most oppressed and willing to struggle, so we can all develop together the tactics that will be most effective in building an anti-capitalist movement here in the belly of the beast. We need to figure out how to fight those in the unions who hold the workers back, while at the same time strengthening the unions, not letting them be picked apart by the bosses. It takes a lot of experience in working class struggles to do all this. And I know that comrades are figuring better ways to put their experiences and strategies together and discuss them. Clearly, this is a movement that, from the point of view of it becoming a mass movement, has yet to be built. While these horrendous cuts are taking place, where are the unions? Where is the women's movement? Where are all the other progressive movements that the bourgeoisie calls special interest groups and that worked so hard to get Obama reelected? They have not called mass demonstrations in Washington over this because they were told that wouldn't be helpful to the Democrats. They're held hostage by a political system owned by the ruling class that has kept the people confused with its hard cop, soft cop approach. Now the results of this deception have hit the fan. What comes next will be an even bigger disaster for the masses, even as Wall Street hopes it brings them a new lease on life. But for anything that's as bad as what's happening, there's always the flip side that we have to think of because we're dialectical. We don't just moan or become demoralized by the miseries that capitalism is spreading. We know the rulers are digging their own graves, and they can't help but do it. Because this is a dying socioeconomic system. Everything they do to keep their profits coming in just undermines their hold over the masses in the long run. We must think of them always as the enemy in a global-wide class war, and we have to look for their weaknesses. Our job is not just to curse and expose them, but to organize the struggle to overthrow them. Are we against all forms of compromise? Of course not. Every union contract is a compromise. Every demand for better jobs, or anti-racist legislation, or a curb on pollution is a compromise. We need to find the most effective ways to fight for these things without compromising the struggle to get rid of this obscene and antiquated system. That is the essence of Leninism, and it's why we need to deepen our party's education of the revolutionary struggles that have already happened in many countries, along with our practice and our agitation.